fresh meat.
For my last episode of Scary Studies for JOBLO, I thought I would conduct something akin to a survey course, where we unpack multiple ways in which stories and movies can be read. Think of these as different lenses in which you can read the same tale. Why? Why dissect horror? That gets to the heart of the Scary Studies series. For me, I appreciate something even more when I can experience it multiple times, understand it from different perspectives, and think about it in different ways. Let's get started. Post-colonialism can be defined by the power and cultural dynamics left after there is an empire and a colony, or indigenous people and a foreign influence. Most history is rife with these instances, and they leave a rich history of tension and horror from the aftermath. American Werewolf in London involves American tourists visiting England. The cultural differences come front and center in The Slaughtered Lamb. The British are the old guard, distrustful of the young Americans who know nothing of the sordid and mysterious past that Europe has endured for thousands of years.
Nice looking group.
Hey, listen, at least it's warm in here.
Look at that.
Yeah, what about it?
It's a 5-pointed star.
Well, maybe the owners are from Texas.
Americans have become removed from it. Any allusion to history is from Hollywood movies.
It's a pentangle, a 5-pointed star. It's used in witchcraft. Lon Chaney Jr. and Universal Studios maintain that's the mark of the Wolfman.
Oh, I see. And you want me to ask them if they're burning candles to ward off monsters.
Right.
And the Alamo in Texas, which doesn't go far back historically.
Remember the Alamo?
I beg your pardon?
Oh, he was just joking.
Joking? I remember the Alamo. I saw it once in London, in Leicester Square.
She means in the cinema. That film with John Wayne.
Underneath the symbol is something that goes much further back in time. Something primal, carnal. When David is transformed into a werewolf, he is in some ways giving in to the primal urges that he finds in England.
Shall I read to you?
Yeah, okay.
He is a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court.
The Connecticut Yankee at King Arthur's Court by Samuel L. Clemens. This is after the preface, but before chapter 1. A word of explanation. It was in Warwick Castle that I came across the curious stranger who I'm going to talk about.
While he wants to be safe inside his American home, the history of Europe is barging in.
I'll get it. All right, hold your horses. All right already.
Or he is thrust into the wilderness, succumbing to his base urges. In films like Poltergeist and Pet Sematary, white people encroach on land that was sacred to Native Americans or previous generations of Americans. They are the ones, in a way, colonizing land that was not their own. It alludes to one of the first true sins of American culture, the genocide of the Native American, but also expansionism in general. It is the suburbanites blindly expanding into areas that have a dark history, tearing down headstones, but ultimately leaving the ghosts of the past underneath. It is paving roads into areas that have problematic pasts, where the grounds are now sour from what happened there before. Sometimes leaving our history dead is better.
Sometimes dead is better.
So many films can be looked at through the lens of gender and the power dynamics that are involved, or can be looked at in how they depict the experience of being a particular gender. Certainly an experience that appears often is womanhood, particularly female adolescence. 2000's Ginger Snaps has become a cult favorite and is often considered one of the best modern werewolf films.
Girls, I told you no more deaths in the house!
Don't be mad.
It's for extra credit.
Sisters Ginger and Bridget are close, outcasts, but also together in their experiences. The transformation of the young Ginger slowly into something different beautifully symbolizes the chaotic and oftentimes traumatic experience of one sibling becoming a woman, interested in new things, interested in boys and dances and belonging with her peers.
You gave it to Jason. You had unprotected sex and you infected him. Oops.
While leaving her sister behind. Ginger finds that she has new gifts that her sister either doesn't have or doesn't want, and it drives a wedge between them. 1976's Carrie explores a similar theme, also using a girl's first period as an inciting incident to introduce horror elements. Carrie is experiencing the worst that becoming a woman in high school can be.
Yo, woman. Why didn't you tell me, Mom?
Full of judging peers and hateful personalities. She is also gifted, which is something that teenagers often find in their adolescent years. The problem is, women often find that they are good at something at the same time when they are feeling the hate of their peers, and so this gift often becomes what they can use for revenge. Here we are broadly discussing films through the lens of social economic classes, rich and poor, and there is possibly no subgenre that explores such social commentaries as much as the classic zombie story. I Am Legend is Richard Matheson's 1954 classic tale that gave rise to the modern zombie and vampire stories. It has been adapted 3 times into film. In it, there is the last man on Earth. Only he is not alone. There are the zombie vampire creatures that remain. The twist is that the zombies are in fact not all evil. They have become a different society, and they have the chance to overcome the disease that has plagued the world. It can be seen as a view of the poor, who are often considered plagued with crime and social problems. The protagonist spends most of the story attacking them collectively as the problem, when in reality the world is more complex. Night of the Living Dead, both the 1968 original and the 1999 remake, helped popularize the cabin-in-the-woods trope that many zombie movies use. Force a cast of characters into a single location, keeping the dead outside. This creates a melting pot of class conflict. In both versions, the decidedly wealthy family fortifies themselves in the basement, keeping what resources they have, protecting their own, but ultimately not helping the problem. The working class above is hard at work trying to solve their issues. Both are subject to the same dread, and that is death lurking from the dark. The rich are continually using what they already have to preserve their own safety and family, while the poor and middle class are trying hard to preserve the larger home they live in. Ultimately, a horror story set in a small setting becomes a metaphor for the greater society.
They're us. We're them, and they're us.
Say what?
Nothing.
With Scary Studies, the hope is that some people have found a movie or story they didn't realize was so interesting, or helped others find depth and meaning behind a classic they have enjoyed for years. It's all done with the ultimate message. Horror is fascinating. If you haven't already, please check out Scary Stories, now available on streaming and DVD. Thanks for listening to this episode of Scary Studies, the series that examines the stories, movies, and myths of what we find scary.